Cavalry units. We often use them in land battles and when we're planning to sally out in siege battles. Most of us also know which cavalry units are nice to bring and which are not. But knowing the differences between all cavalry units is actually pretty unknown. So to start off, we got all the Cataphract units. The Camel Cataphract is my favorite unit and is also one of the best units in the game. So this is definitely God tier unit. But the Camel Cataphracts of Parthia cost 160 more and are basically the same, so they are not worth it. And that's why they're downgraded to strong. The Elite Camel Cataphract of Saba is a good unit, but you're just paying too much for it. The 1000 cost Camel Cataphract is just so much more cost efficient, and paying 280 more for a little bit better stats is just not worth it. But for 100 more, I would definitely rate them over the Parthians, but still not in God tier. The Elite Cataphract of Parthia has the same thing with the normal Cataphracts. It costs so much, nearly 1500, and it's slow. It deals a lot of damage, but I'm really not a fan of this unit, so that's why I have to put it at decent. It just costs too much. I'm more a fan of the cheap Cataphracts. They are definitely worth their money. I would put this unit above the Camels because they're 100 cheaper and they're just pretty strong units. Now we got the Hellenic Cataphracts. So this is a little bit different. These cost 1470 and these are really slow. They can do a lot of damage, but they're just overpriced. The Camel Cataphracts are so much better. They're so overpriced that I have to put them at lacking. Now we got the Mid-Tier Barbarian and Barbarian Cavalry units. The Heavy Horse is an excellent unit. Cost 700 and they belong definitely at God tier, together with the Mighty Horse of Nervii, the Cav of Lustani, and the Barbarian Cavalry of Aravachi. Here's the difference between the Heavy Horse and the Mighty Horse. The Heavy Horse has just better stats for 20 cost more, and here's the difference between the Cav and the Barbarian Cavalry. I would say the Barbarian Cavalry is definitely more cost effective than the Lustani Cavalry, and they really belong all at God tier. They're really cost effective. Now we got the Kushite and the Sabian Elite Melee Cavalry. Initially I thought they were different because their unit card is also different, but they're exactly the same. They have exactly the same stats, but the Sabian one you should never bring because you got the 1000 cost Cavalry, but the Kushite one is definitely worth to bring if you need some cavalry, and that's why they belong at God tier, and they are even above the mid-tier cavalry units. Now we got 3 low-tier sword cavalry units. For these 3 I just don't need to give an explanation, they're just trash. Never bring them. Next up we got these 4 units which cost basically 600. The Median Cavalry for 620 is an amazing unit. 100% God tier, and I would put them above the Heavy Horse. This is such a cost-effective unit, great stats for the price, and just a very nice unit to bring. In contrary, the Legionary Cavalry is very shit. Really not worth the money, but I would still put it at lacking and behind the Cataphracts. Cataphracts are just so overpriced. The Carthaginian Cavalry for 610 are a strong unit. They don't belong at God tier, definitely not, but I would give them a place as strong behind the Cataphracts. The Egyptian Cavalry for 600 is better than the Carthaginian one, but definitely not in God tier, so still as strong. Now we got 2 Shock Cav units which cost basically 1000, and one is the Hippeus Lances, which a lot of factions have. The Noble Horse of Carthage is better than the Hippeus. I'm still definitely not a fan of them, but they're a decent unit to bring, but they're definitely under the Cataphracts. Next up we got 5 very strong mid to high tier cavalry units which cost around 800, which are very strong. They all have similar stats, but there's one big scam in there, which is the Himmler Cavalry of Saba, which belongs at CA. You fucked this one up. Their stats are even worse than the Median Cavalry, which costs 620. They cost 800 and is a 100% scam unit. Never bring these, never, especially as Saba. You got the Camel Cataphracts. The Noble Blood Cavalry of Bactra is a God tier unit. I would actually put it under the median for cost effectiveness. The Cappadocian Cavalry is a very strong, very nice unit. One of my favorite mid to high tier cavalry to bring. They deserve to place above the median for sure. And they're also more cost effective than the Noble Blood of Bactra if you compare their stats. The Bactrian one costs 880 and the Cappadocian costs 820. Definitely more cost effective. But in the end, boss over boss, we got the Nabatean Noble Cavalry. Behind the Camel Cataphracts for sure. Very strong, cost effective unit. Just nothing bad about this one. And for 750 you got a unit which is between the Cappadocians and the Medians. And that's why I have to put it right here. Now we got my favorite cavalry units to bring in sieges. All of these cost around 500. The Getae one for 550 is a very strong unit and goes even into God tier for cost effectiveness. You could also put these at the top of strong, but because I'm a really fan of these, I just have to put them at the bottom of God tier. The Citizen would definitely go all the way at the bottom of God tier. The Massilian one is actually one of the most cost effective low tier cavalry units in the game for 500. Very strong units, I mean look at their stats. The Thracian one is also for 500, more cost effective than the Getae one, but still under the Massilian one. The Roman Equites are even under the Citizens. The Light Horse for 440 are under the Equites, but are not that bad of a unit. But the Bactrian low tier cavalry for 430 is my favorite low tier cavalry. Because it's so cheap, it got a lot of armor, can definitely do a lot of damage against archers, and that's why I have to put it under the Massilian one, even though their stats don't say that. I'm personally also a huge fan of the camels because of their mass. They just deal so much damage on the charge, like the Camel Cataphracts. But in terms of stats, I would definitely have to rate them under the Equites, but personally I would actually put them near the Bactrian Cavalry. Now we got the Elite Melee Cavalry. Guys, the melee cavalry, like these ones, are made to fight infantry. But the thing is, you never want cavalry to stay in melee with infantry because that just never goes good. No bonus versus cavalry, and that's why they are lacking. Even under the Hellenic Cataphract, I apparently have them double in this tier list. But the companion melee cavalry is better than the Carthaginian one. Next up, we got 4 pretty strong mid-tier shock cav. The Sabian one costs 890 and is not that bad. It's only a little bit on the expensive side, but it's still as strong and above the Cataphracts. The Roman one is definitely the worst of them. The Persian shock cav is actually basically the same as the Thessalian shock cav, but for 760 is a little bit less cost efficient. So that's why I have to put the Persian still above the Sabian one, but the Thessalian one above them. You can compare their stats. They're pretty close to each other. But the Macecily shock cav, which I discovered, is actually the most cost efficient. For 690, it's very cheap, very strong. It can do a lot of damage for their price. Here, look at their stats compared to the Thessalian cavalry. For 50 less, it's pretty nice. Next up, we got 2 different Italian cavalry. One is the mercenary one and one is the Roman one. They're both pretty shit, so at lacking, but the Roman one costs 50 more and is less cost effective. Here are their stats. 50 more for that cavalry is just not worth it. Now we got the 3 elite Barbarian Cavalry units. This one has Arverni, Boyai, Glacia, Tylis. This one has a lot of factions. These are strong cavalry units, don't get me wrong. So they're definitely as strong. I would put them under the Cataphract units and also actually under the Egyptian and Carthaginian cavalry units. The Iceni one is the least cost effective of the 3, but the Swabi one is actually for 1180 the most cost effective one. It is on the cheaper side compared to the 1300 one and the 1280 one, and it has still really good stats. The Aravachi Elite Cav and the Odrysian Elite Cav are basically in the same category of these 3. These are actually more cost effective than these 2 Barbarian Cav units. The Aravachi one is better than the Odrysian one though. You can compare their stats. Now we got the 4 cheapest shock cav units. The Sabian one for 470 is not that cheap, but I would still put them at decent. The Macecily one got Gorilla Deploy, which is the only shock cavalry unit and melee cavalry unit in the game which has Gorilla, and that's why I have to put it at God tier, even above the Light Horse. And the Sarissa one for 400 is an okay cavalry unit. I would put them above the camels. They're nothing special, they're not great or something, but for 400, you know, why not? It's pretty cheap. And the cheapest cav unit in the game is this one, the Sarissa cavalry unit for 340. And it's definitely more cost effective than the Sarissa one. Here, look at their stats. So this is definitely not a bad unit to bring. Now we got the 7 elite Hellenic shock cavalry units and 1 barbarian one. Here you need to just trust me with. I already did the research on this one. They're all really close to each other in terms of price and stats. The Egyptian one is at the top, above the Hippeus and the noble cavalry of Carthage. After that one we got the Macedonian one. Behind that the shock cav of Epirus. Then we got the Bactrian elite shock cav. Then the Pontic one. Then the Barbarian one. And afterwards the Agema one. The Pergamon one is the worst of them. So you just got to trust me on this one. It's in this order, but they're all more or less the same in the end. Next up we got the Azide Knights and the elite Roman cavalry unit. Their stats are really close to each other actually, because they are more armored and more decent in combat compared to the elite shock cavalry units, even though they do a lot of damage on the charge. I would put them above the shock cavalry units, but still under the 1 Cataphract, and the Roman one behind the Azad Knight. Next up we got the Arabian low-tier cavalry units, which are just dog shit. The armored one is even worse than the cheap 450 one. They are more expensive and the stats don't even become better. Some of them even worse, so definitely at CA, and even under the Himmler cavalry. Next up we got 2 interesting cavalry units. They're both really not worth it to bring, especially for their faction, but they're still decent cavalry units, and that's why they are at decent, but still at the bottom of decent. The Macedonian 700 cost cavalry unit is actually a really bad one, and they're definitely at lacking. They could even go into CA, what have you done with this unit, but I would put them up here at lacking. Last but not least we got the 5 Barbarian low tier cavalry units. The Iceni one for 580 is actually not that bad and belong behind the Carthaginian one. The Riders of the Hunt are directly under them, but here they get really shit. The light cavalry unit I would put them at the bottom of lacking, but these 2 definitely at CA, what have you done with this unit. And I would put the Arabian 451 even above them. So yeah, this is the tier list. I actually have to put the 3 low tier shock cavalry units at decent, at the bottom of decent. They're just not that great. So yeah, this is the tier list. Let me know if you see anything really weird, but I don't think so. And if you want to see more of these tier list videos, make sure to check the ranking of all Rome 2 low tier mid tier units. And I want to say much love to my Patreon and YouTube members. I really appreciate you guys. Bye bye.